Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Longo, First Vice President of Commercial Lending at Liberty Bank. Today's CBIA presentation is about building and recruiting post-millennial talent, which I'm very interested in myself as I have two Gen Z college students, and I would love to understand how to help them get into the workforce very soon. Liberty Bank is a 199-year-old mutual savings bank with over $7 billion in assets. We have over 55 branches throughout Connecticut and Western Massachusetts. I'm pleased to say that the CBIA and Liberty Bank have been partners together for many years. We are very proud to be the series sponsor today, and I believe you're going to enjoy our presentation today. So let me introduce Chris Rose, who's the Senior Talent Acquisition Consultant of Human Resources Consortium.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to the presentation. And I look forward to questions and a robust discussion at the end of the presentation. If we see a trend of a certain question being hit repeatedly, we may stop and just address that. But looking forward to hearing your questions, and hopefully you find this to be enriching and helpful moving forward. So with that, I will share my screen in a minute. Just wanted to give you a quick overview of my background, just to give you some context. I have been in human resources for the last 25 years plus. I won't go any further than that. And of that, 20 years have been focused in talent acquisition on a variety of different scales and levels. And spent 9 years in the Connecticut marketplace, living in Connecticut and in the greater New London area. And the majority of my business in terms of talent acquisition and consulting and any strategic work I'm doing is in the Connecticut market. And so I'm very familiar with the marketplace you're trying to recruit from and the challenges that we face in terms of attracting and retaining good, talented candidates. So with that, I will share my screen and begin the presentation. Okay. Millennial and Gen Z hiring, we're going to discuss winning strategies for attracting, engaging, and retaining top talent. We'll go over a brief overview of the evolving job market, which changes on a daily basis. It's very interesting in this marketplace, given the impact and the rise of millennials and Gen Z in the workforce, how things have shifted and it demands a new approach to hiring and retention. We'll discuss adapting strategies for your organizations to adjust your recruitment, engagement, and retention strategies to meet the evolving needs and expectations of these candidates from these generations. And we'll also discuss a generational understanding of getting a better sense of Gen Z millennial values, motivations, and what is crucial to your organizational success. In terms of navigating the shifting landscape, currently, the workforce composition of millennials and Gen Z, they make up over 60% of our workforce globally. Millennials born between 1981 and 1996 are the largest generation in today's workforce, comprising of 35% of the global workforce. Gen Z born 1997 to 2012 is the emerging generation and is now entering the workforce and definitely delivering fresh perspectives. Some lesser known changes that are affecting and still affecting the recruitment and retention marketplace. After post-pandemic, going through the pandemic was definitely a shift in the market for all, particularly in the healthcare and the nonprofit sectors as well. We saw a massive shift across the board to remote work, flexible schedules, and a rising increase, which continues, of mental health and well-being support that has now become essential. We're seeing a workplace revolution. There's intense competition for talent, and we've seen a transition from more traditional hierarchical structures to more of a flat and more collaborative organizational structure. Job hopping culture we've seen with the rise in the percentage of candidates coming out of the millennial and Gen Z marketplace. We're definitely seeing a higher quit rate as Gen Z candidates and millennial candidates are leaving for roles that offer better flexibility, career growth, and a more acute desire to bond and align with the culture of an organization and making sure that it affects and aligns with their needs. Some of the key market factors that are impacting recruitment across all skill sets. All industries are facing acute talent shortages across all skill sets. Millennial and Gen Z's tendencies to leave these roles is now costing an annual estimation of $30.5 billion in the US, and that's based on Gallup. And I don't know if anyone noticed on the news this morning, I happened to hear a report saying that 50% of workers, according to Gallup, are unhappy and considering making a change in their employment. And the two factors are primarily compensation would be one, and a lack of a clearly defined growth or promotional path, and just feeling like they need to leave in order to move up. In terms of engagement gaps, there's only 29% of millennials that feel like they're engaged at work. 55% feel disengaged or disconnected from their organization's values and operating structure. They feel that there's a mismatch between what is being offered to them and what they're actually looking for long term, and they're choosing to leave. Intangibles that we're seeing from millennial and Gen Z workers, they're seeking a work-life balance. Prioritizing flexibility in the workplace and remote work has become essential. As mentioned, they are frequently switching jobs. Millennials and Gen Z are quick to leave if they feel like their needs are being unmet. And in addition to that, if they don't feel like they're being heard, that is a key component of that. They may not speak up in terms of their needs. So it's something that we need to look into as leaders and owners of companies in terms of how we address and connect with these candidates. In the market, there's a bit of an entitlement mentality. Organizations are feeling like some of the expectations from this candidate workforce is, a high expectation for competitive compensation, feeling valued, and also a clear path to career growth. And in some cases, their compensation expectations might be a little bit above what the market may justify. And what really it boils down to is how you connect to communicate and explaining the opportunities that are within the organization and where they can get to where they want to be in a short period of time, whether it be financially or from a promotional standpoint. Candidates from the Gen Z and millennial market, as mentioned, are being labeled as job hoppers, but what they're really looking for is a connection and a desire to feel aligned with purpose and growth with the organization that they work for, and that's what's driving this behavior. This generation of workers is searching for a purpose, and they're seeking roles that align with their personal values, and they're looking for organizations that align with whose mission aligns with their values. In order to position your organization to win this talent war, one of the main aspects that we've seen shifting in the marketplace is Gen Z and millennials are absolutely expecting a digital-first recruitment process. They're looking for an easy application and onboarding workflows. Essentially, they need to be able to utilize their phone or a tablet, and it needs to be seamless and streamlined. The attention that candidates do, if there's multiple clicks in order to apply or multiple pages to be filled out, and I know that this can be complicated in certain markets. Healthcare, for example, has a certain number of documentations that are required to be filled out in order to ensure that they're compliant. So there's a battle there between compliance and what is expected from a standpoint of organizational structure, and a desire to seamlessly be able to apply to jobs quickly and ideally utilizing their smartphones or tablets in order to do so. Candidates are seeking flexibility in their work arrangements, remote options, and work-life integration are absolutely a must. One other important item that I want to speak to, going back to leveraging technology for a minute, onboarding workflows. I have seen it myself in the market, an indication where we see candidates who actually, you get them through the recruitment process, you find that right candidate, and then halfway through the process, they just stop either applying or communicating or responding in any way. And it could be, and in instances, what I've seen is the onboarding process is either complicated, unnecessary steps. Perhaps if you have a pre-employment requirement to have a pre-employment physical or a drug screen, it's not necessarily the actual process of that. It's the structure and driving through that process of getting the candidate through. I've seen in my experience in doing consulting work, organizations will typically have a process that's been set for a while, many, many years of doing it the same way. And candidates just don't look at it in the same manner. They're looking to be guided through that process or have it be streamlined. And if they run into a process that starts to build frustration, we tend to see them balk and will possibly take another opportunity quickly and go to an organization that has a more streamlined process rather than wait. Another item to consider within that component is if you have a new employee orientation structure, it's very standard in the market for candidates or for organizations to do a biweekly or a monthly orientation in order to pool a candidate into a room and be able to deliver the expectations of what that job would entail and orient them effectively. I have seen an increasing trend of candidates who will go through the entire process of hiring and then not show up for onboarding because they took another job and just don't show up for orientation. It's a frustrating trend for companies. I understand it completely. It's something to be aware of. And I just wanted to make sure we clarify it and would be happy to answer any other questions at the end of the presentation. In terms of culture and purpose, this generation of worker is absolutely looking for clear communication of your organization's mission, values, and social responsibility efforts. It's very, very clear that their personal goals, they're seeking organizations that have similar interests and desires to help and reach out into the marketplace and into the workforce and to help others. They want to align with core values. In terms of development, I'm seeing a very sharp increase in candidates from the Gen Z and millennial market that they are looking for continuous learning, mentorship, coaching in a very clear path that is vital for them to feel like they're going to be able to stay with your organization long term. If you're a smaller organization that doesn't necessarily have a clear path or you're hiring these candidates to help grow, sharing that plan or even being open and candid and having a conversation saying, look, our organization is in rapid growth mode. We could go in a variety of different directions. We see a future for you in a few different aspects, and this is the possibilities. It's okay, and I would highly encourage you share your vision, at least if they feel like they're part of being the part of that vision, part of the growth. The path may not be entirely clear as your company continues to expand, but at least they feel like they're a part of that process. Key factors for Gen Z and millennial engagement, performance, and retention. As we've mentioned a few times, flexibility and remote work. There is definitely a trend coming out of the pandemic to do more and more hybrid or remote work. We're seeing a pushback a little bit in the marketplace, particularly in larger organizations, in large corporations where they're trying to push back to a more standard office environment. It's going to be an interesting challenge because this is a group of people who were coming into a marketplace that was unprecedented, and the pandemic absolutely drove the ability to or the necessity to work from home. And therefore, we had to start implementing technologies that could do that. And that's what they understand as the norm. So shifting back to a more traditional model, if that's what your company so desires, it's absolutely something that you would need to discuss and have a plan, and also have expectations that you may lose out on a certain portion of the market or candidates may choose to leave. Inclusiveness and equitability. They absolutely expect a workplace to be inclusive, valuing diversity and performance, as well as equitable employment opportunities, compensation, and employee relations. And what I could highlight there is the key to that is communication. They want an open communication. They want open dialogue. Career development, transparent career paths when applicable, continuous training are key to keeping these candidates engaged. As I mentioned in the beginning, mental health support component. Having mental health resources and wellness programs that are important for their satisfaction and well-being is absolutely a trend we're seeing in the market and becoming more and more, even in the healthcare market, whether outside of employment, on a personal level, mental health support is becoming more and more important and something that these candidates are seeking. Continuous feedback. I can't emphasize this enough. I've gone through this myself. Regular constructive feedback is a must for Gen Z to stay motivated and performed. I recently went through a circumstance where I felt like I was providing regular feedback, and we did a survey and found out that some of our millennial and Gen Z employees felt like we weren't doing enough in the moment. We would give regular feedback during one-on-one sessions, during group meetings. What I missed on a personal level, and it was a learning opportunity for me fairly recently, was feedback in the moment. Hey, good job, or hey, you had a great day today. You had a great week. That was something that startled me a little bit, but I totally understood it once we got through that conversation. It was a very great opportunity for me to learn. You're always learning in this world, and it was a great feedback to be given so that to understand how they viewed what regular feedback is. And again, it highlights the need for communication. What to look for in potential hires. Most importantly, cultural fit. Somebody that's going to align with your organization's culture and mission. This is your chance to not just try to fit somebody to a job description, but to fit them to your culture and to make sure that the fit is aligned for the long term. One of the things that at the HRC we take great pride in doing is, if we're working a role for a candidate and doing a retained search for an organization, we do a great deep dive in terms of why is the opportunity open? What is the culture like? What are the obstacles? Why did the previous person vacate this role? Was it a decision by the organization or a decision by the candidate? When's the last time was your job description reviewed? How did you, come up with what the key skills and what the weighted factors are for making the decision, and what their skill sets and experience will be tasked to do? It's a great opportunity to really take a deep dive when you're looking at potential hires in order to get a strong understanding of what do we really need. A growth mindset. Candidates are eager to learn in this market. They want to adapt to perform and grow within the organization. They don't mind being challenged. In fact, they're looking for challenges. They love being tasked with owning a certain portion of a project or a certain key deliverable, and seek out those opportunities. Candidates are facing a very uncertain market and certain circumstances, both from as we talked about, the collision between a desire for some organizations to go back to a traditional work environment and their desire for balance and flexibility. They're looking for opportunities that the organization and the candidate need to find a match in terms of resilience and what their collective is moving forward. Purpose-driven motivation. You want to find candidates that are seeking meaningful work and are aligned. Whether they have all the skill sets or not, if there is a desire to learn and they are aligned with your values, then the question becomes, is this person coachable? And can they contribute to something greater than themselves? And a key way to do that is to the utilization of behavioral questions in terms of getting a sense of, in a certain circumstance in your life, how did you go about this certain task? What were the obstacles that you faced? What went wrong? How did you overcome those challenges? And then most importantly, where we really try to emphasize candidate discussion is, did they learn from that? And not only did they learn from that experience, have they applied it moving forward into changing the way if they're a manager, the way they manage, if they're a worker, a direct line worker, in terms of doing a better job or streamlining. So you want a coachable candidate that not only hears you, but then can apply what is learned. Communication skills are key. The ability to collaborate, seek feedback, and clearly communicate is critical. And that's on both sides. Candidates need to be able to do that. The trends we see in the marketplace with Millennial and Gen Z is that communication is key, but they need to be able to express and communicate, and they also need to understand what is expected of them and react accordingly. A couple key questions to consider when you're hiring candidates. Is it us or them? I when I wrote this, I was reflecting of my upbringing and the way I came into the workforce. And when I joined the workforce, it was, this is your job. This is how it's done. This is how we've always done it. Good luck. And you have various different levels of expectation set in communication. And sometimes you are concerned about, I don't want to raise my hand and act like I don't know what I'm doing because I don't want my boss to yell at me. That market has changed and we are in such a different place now. So we need to reflect on whether or not our organization's culture and leadership is resonating with this market. And as the millennials, their percentage of the marketplace grows, we're going to have to resonate with younger workers. Are we fitting the role with the candidate or the candidate to the role? A measure of balance is needed on both sides, but you need to take a hard look to ensure that the role aligns with the candidate's values while offering opportunities for growth. And also to ask yourself the question, when's the last time we took a hard look at this role? Is it what we still need, or is it a vacancy that we just approved because somebody left and we're just trying to fill that gap, moving it forward? Is it really the right role, and is it aligned with what we truly need as an organization? How do we lead? Focusing on leadership development and creating an environment where millennials and Gen Z feel heard. Again, it goes back to communication. It goes back to active listening, which is a very hard skill. And there are organizations that specialize in training on just active listening, whether it's in a corporate setting or a personal setting, because we all have our filters based on our experience and upbringing as to how we hear things. So we need to make sure that we're actively listening and we make those candidates feel heard. What is important to a potential hire? Elevating your selection process with meaningful interviews, exercises, and presentations and team discussions. Personalizing your onboarding process by conducting focus groups to better understand the needs and preferences of your newer workforce. Again, this goes back especially on the onboarding component. Organizations tend to stick to a structure that works until it doesn't work. What I'm seeing in the market and where the trends are going is those structures are starting to not work. Candidates are moving and they're looking for organizations that streamline processes and utilize technology to the best they can. And there are some free technologies out there that organizations can do in order to adapt to a more remote and hybrid workforce. And this is essential in order to attract and retain candidates from the Millennial and Gen Z market. Is your talent acquisition process aligned with today's market? I spend a lot of my focus with organizations right here. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Did your talent acquisition process shift during the pandemic? Has it shifted since? When the pandemic hit, organizations were structured in such a way, I can speak specifically because I spent a significant amount of the last 10 years in healthcare outside of my consulting work as well. That marketplace was not aligned. That was an inflow. A lot of corporations and organizations are structured to post a job, maybe use the job boards, whether it be Indeed or LinkedIn, and wait for candidates to apply and then sort through those candidates, sift through, find the candidates that seem to fit that you'd be interested in calling, and then your talent acquisition team or your HR team, depending on your structure, reaches out to find the most qualified candidates to bring in. During the pandemic, that shifted dramatically where basically the faucet turned off. There were candidates weren't applying anymore. There were people choosing to leave the market altogether, retire early, shift careers in an entirely different direction. It was an opportunity for the whole world to basically take a stop and decide, is this where I want to be and how I want to move forward? And in a lot of instances, it created massive gaps in the market. So that's an example of how a TA process, a talent acquisition process, not shifting with the market and having to catch up. And that's a very challenging place to be. What is your outbound recruiting strategy? Are you proactively sourcing candidates? Are you utilizing social media? Are you utilizing networks? Are you going to events? Are you hosting events? One of the interesting things that I found through my experience, if you put something on LinkedIn, for example, and say, hey, we're hiring, you may have a few people that will respond or like it, maybe even repost it. If you reach out to somebody who's a first level connection in your network and say, hey, we're hiring for this particular skill set. I know that you know people in this marketplace. Is there anyone you can think of that might be a fit? It's amazing the difference when you ask somebody specifically to help you as opposed to just posting something out in the market. It is a massive increase. I don't have a percentage on it, but I'd have to say you're going to get 50% of a better response. And again, that's off the hip, but I'm telling you, there's a much better return on investment if you take the time to reach out to people you think might be able to add value and give you a referral. In terms of hosting events, it's being flexible, getting out, attending events, hosting them. It could be job fairs. It could be virtual job fairs. There's a lot in networking. You never stop networking for talent. And if you feel like you're getting into a better place where you're in terms of your hiring and staffing ratios, that's an opportunity to start saying, do we have everybody we need from a performance standpoint? Who are our underperformers? Can we top grade those underperforming candidates or employees? What are we doing to reach out to untapped market and talent pools? The best candidates in most instances, especially as you climb the skill set or the employment hierarchy, are going to be passive candidates. How are you reaching passive candidates? And again, networking, referrals, and direct sourcing when necessary. And it takes time and it takes energy. And then it's your message. Once you decide that you're going to go out and try to reach into those untapped pools or reach out to a passive candidate marketplace, are you sending standard messages or are you sending customized messages? Are you taking the time to read a candidate's resume or profile and speak to that in the conversation so that they know that you're not wasting their time and that you're actually speaking to something that's relevant, a concise, well thought out message to the right candidate? It takes more time to do it, but it's doing it well, and you will get a better return or response rate. And it allows you to connect with that candidate because they feel like, oh, they took the time to read my profile or my resume, and they're reaching out because they feel I'm a good fit. Well, I'm going to be more likely to respond. Are your talent acquisition goals and resources aligned with your strategic business goals? I've seen many organizations who might have needs or openings because they've always had these openings, but are they aligned with your strategic business goals? Whatever the skill set might be, did we take our business objectives or the strategic plan that we set out for the year, and then did we back engineer and align our talent acquisition practice to meet those goals? And do we have sufficient resources to do that? I've seen a dramatic increase over the last 4 or 5 years. Due to necessity, organizations had to cut back, and in a lot of cases, they will cut back on back office, whatever that back office may be, whether it be on the finance side, payroll, human resources, talent acquisition. But then your hiring needs on the front line are even more than you've ever had. So you're asking TA and HR to do more with less. Okay, there's a certain number of vacancies that recruiters can handle. There's a finite number, and it depends on the skill set and what you're working on. Do we have enough to be able to go out and attract the talent we need? And do we have all the tools in place to make their job easier and more effective so that they can reach out and do more with less? What we're seeing is an increase in burnout on the TA side and the HR side, where doing more with less for the last 5 years has led to your TA or your HR experts choosing to go somewhere else or do different things. That compounds a problem of vacancy, and it compounds the ability to onboard effectively because your advocates for your organization and your ambassadors of the organization typically lie within your talent acquisition and your HR team. And if you lose that skill set, it's the intangible component of how they understand the true culture of your organization and how they express that outbound in order to attract candidates that is key. So if you're burning out your TA team or your HR team, if they're doing, both hiring and HR generalists and doing a full scope work, That's a very difficult situation to unwind once it's happened. I speak to the art and science of recruiting. The art is unique, truthful employment branding. It's building relationships and understanding the cultural fit and storytelling. I take it beyond that. Art is the nuanced way of how you communicate those. You can have the most well-written job description. You need to be able to have your team or your hiring managers, no matter who's a part of that interview process, they have to understand the art of recruiting, which is connecting. It's building a relationship. It's being actively curious. Anytime I look at a new resume, I'm always curious as to what I'm going to see. And when I go into an interview, I want to get to know the candidate beyond their skill sets. I want to understand some tangibles. I want to make a connection with them outside of necessarily what we're discussing on the resume or within the job description. The science is the data-driven decisions and metrics to optimize the process. It's here's the job description, here's the skill sets of the candidates. This is a match. They meet these. These are the required goals, whether it be desired or mandatory goals based on the job description. Both are important, but where I feel organizations lean, they lean way more heavily on the science side and they skip the art side. And a component of that, as I mentioned earlier, is behavioral interviewing techniques, really getting to know the candidate in order to make a connection. Tailoring your recruitment strategy in today's market. Some suggestions that I highlight here to customize your recruitment approach. Leverage social media, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. Younger candidates in this market, they are absolutely using social media. They're also going to do their homework utilizing social media. So make sure that your profiles on Glassdoor and other sites are up to date, and that you're addressing any negative press that you're getting for whatever reason. You need to be able to leverage that, even if it's through your own personal page, whether it's your own personal Facebook page or Instagram page. It is very important that you're utilizing social media because that's where your candidates are spending a majority of their time. Showcasing the organizational culture, sharing behind the scenes content, employee stories, and inclusivity. Nothing is more impactful and powerful than a manager or an employee telling a story of how they made an impact in the organization, what this company and organization has meant to them. It's a look behind the curtain, and it gives, it's basically a published backdoor reference for your company. And it's a great way to highlight, who these people will ultimately be working with and whether or not they can connect with these types of individuals. It's an excellent tool. Being transparent. Again, speaking about job descriptions, providing clear and accurate job descriptions that are up to date with your expectations of the role in order to ensure you have a good fit. Clarifying growth opportunities, as we discussed, and clarifying expectations on both sides, being clear about your expectations in the role and letting the candidate express what they think their expectations are so that you get off on the right foot. Another thing I would highlight with that is having a clear onboarding plan beyond just orientation. What is your 30, 60, 90-day plan? The, tell me, show me, watch me type of setting. Making sure that you have a plan when you onboard so that you don't immediately have a candidate that ultimately feels disenchanted or frustrated or confused and doesn't have a clear path forward. Creating a digital experience, online application process, video interviews or virtual interviews when possible. It's an effective and efficient way to do initial screening, utilizing virtual job fairs if necessary. I still believe very strongly in an on-site interview. I don't think organizations necessarily have to rely completely on a virtual process, but it's a great way to make an initial connection and making sure that you're prepared for those those online and virtual meetings so that you can screen the candidates you truly want to spend the time to have them come on site and meet and be a part of your organization and participate in an on-site interview. Consider offering unusual perks, mental health days. Student loan repayment can be difficult in today's market. Coming up with creative ways to, in the pandemic, a lot of people started pushing pet insurance as an option. Anything creative to make you stand out, even from the attempt of trying to be an organization that is doing things differently. And then obviously tech allowances as well. I highlight here connect, connect, and connect. Staying in touch. One of the biggest issues I've seen in talent acquisition is we spend all our time up front finding the candidate. We finally get a candidate to apply. You have their resume. You've done the first interview, possibly the second interview. The timing between those steps to then an offer, to then on board, to then hire. That's 4 clear different steps that I just mentioned. The timing between those and the transition and how well those are shared. The first interviewer, if the second interviewer is separate, making sure that they're aligned, making sure that there's been communication so that they're not starting the process over, having a concise onboarding and hiring process, and then getting that candidate working and in training as quickly and effectively as possible. I've seen more candidates be lost in the market. We hear it in social media on a personal and professional level, being ghosted or going dark. I see it. The uptick in ghosting on a professional level is tremendous. And it usually is, they get to the first interview, they get to the second interview, and then they start fading. And it could be that your process, it could be the communication. It's streamlining and connecting those dots and staying in touch with them. I train recruiters all the time who struggle with this. And I said, the easiest thing you can do once you've connected with a candidate is to stay in touch with them, even if you don't have an answer. Calling them and letting them know you care and you're working on getting it squared away is more valuable than waiting till you have an answer and then they may not call you back. And then all of a sudden they're not responding to your messages. Connecting is vital in this market. Shaping your employer brand. Some topics to highlight to attract millennial and Gen Z candidates. Being authentic. I have found the easiest thing to do is to be vulnerable in certain things when managing or even interviewing candidates. Just being honest, being authentic, show who you really are. Allow yourself to just relax and try to connect. As I mentioned earlier, sharing employee testimonials or using video or blog formats to feature employee stories is a very powerful tool for this generation of worker. They want to be able to connect before they even walk through your door. Supporting social causes. Show your involvement in social causes, environmental and political causes. Being active, showing that the organization cares and that they're aligning behind their values and they're actually taking action on some of their value statements is very important to this marketplace. Highlighting opportunities for advancement. As I mentioned earlier, it states on the slide, showing clear progression isn't always possible depending on the size of your organization. And I know the CBIA has organizations, a lot of your smaller organizations, just doing the best you can with what you have. And some of you are in growth mode. You don't necessarily have to have a clear map, but your clarity of communication in terms of your vision can overcome that. Offering coaching and mentorship can be in lieu or in addition to doing that as well. It's vital to show them a path forward. Communication in terms of hiring and retention. Clarifying expectations, as I mentioned before, being transparent about the job, the responsibilities, and your expectations right out of the gate is super important. As I mentioned, in a lesson I learned the hard way recently, ensuring that your organization recognizes and celebrates those achievements and builds morale. Collaboration is key, fostering an environment of open communication, teamwork, and knowledge sharing. Giving tasks and letting them own those tasks and having the confidence in your leadership to let them fail if necessary in order to grow and learn is vital. Having that confidence in yourself to allow your new employees as they grow to learn through experience and learn through collaboration is key. Soliciting feedback. Myself as a Gen Xer, I have to do a better job of soliciting feedback, and I do this for a living. It's still something that I was raised in a certain way and have a certain manner of communication, and I have my weekly meetings with people and with teams. You need to meet the person where they are. Their level of feedback may be at a different level than that. So asking, an employee, Are you comfortable with weekly meetings? Are you comfortable with that feedback? This is how I've managed in the past, but just because this is the way I've always done it, doesn't mean that's the way that it's going to work for that employee. What is your expectation of feedback? What is your expectation of me as a leader? Having those conversations is very, very vital in order to keep the Millennial and Gen Z candidates engaged. As I mentioned, empowering employees to have autonomy and take ownership of certain tasks and projects is vital to keeping them engaged and excited about what's next. Some additional strategies to retain Gen Z and millennial candidates. Define career growth trajectories and investing in training programs. There are a tremendous amount of resources out there that can help you if you don't have in-house training programs. As mentioned throughout this conversation or this presentation, flexible work hours when possible, offering a hybrid model, and revamping or considering taking a look at your PTO policy. A lot of organizations are taking a hard look at that. The unlimited PTO is a scary leap forward. I've seen more organizations doing it. I've found historically people do not take advantage of an unlimited PTO policy, and it is something that is attractive. But that's something that each organization has to decide for themselves. Cultivating a positive work culture. Again, fostering inclusivity and collaboration is enormous within the organization. Leadership development to enhance the employee glue to your organization. It's basically feeling a part of something bigger is what they're seeking. Creating meaningful roles, aligning the employee's work with the organization's broad mission, and giving them opportunities to make an impact. This is especially important when you have an organization that is in growth mode or an undefined business plan moving forward. It allows the creativity and maybe sitting down and having a conversation with those employees to say, hey, where do you want to be? And I don't know is okay. Let's work it out together. Let's see what we can shape as a future opportunity for you in order to find something that you feel you can grow into. And then offering competitive total rewards. A lot of candidates and employees are leaving, as I mentioned, the Gallup poll today, 50% of employees are looking to make a change, and a lot of it is regarding salary and benefits and opportunities for growth. Ensuring that your competitive total rewards is aligned is going to help you attract and retain your top talent. If you're in a certain circumstance where you're a nonprofit and you know you're going to be below the market, then culture and coaching and being a part of a greater purpose is something that you're going to have to become excellent at in order to maybe, get a candidate, to consider staying in an organization that might be 5 or 10% below the market, but aligns with their values. So there are opportunities to do that, but you need an organization to feel like they're going to something that is greater than themselves and offering a service to the community that's greater than themselves. In conclusion, key factors for employers to consider: adapting to a changing workforce. Employers must embrace flexibility, career development, and a sense of purpose to retain millennials and Gen Z. Movement forward, absolutely understanding and appreciating generational values will provide an organization with a competitive edge to attract that talent. If your candidates feel heard and they feel like they're going to be joining something that's moving forward and is exciting, they're going to be more apt to stay. A call to action is absolutely to start implementing some strategies to help building a future-proof workforce capable of thriving in an increasingly complex and technology-driven market. There are so many tools out there, and there's so many opportunities to utilize technology. They also want to take a balance. If you're going to have a hybrid workforce or a virtual workforce, technology is great, but it still needs to be meaningful meetings, having tasks, clear goals, and still taking the time to connect. You can connect virtually. It is definitely more challenging, but there are steps you can take in order to be able to connect to your workforce if you are a fully remote organization. And it's important to do that. And sometimes that gets lost. You get busy. And one of the things I always say when I talk to a new client is there's busy and there's effective. You don't want to get lost in the cloud of busy and lose sight of effective. Organizational purpose, clearly understanding your organization's purpose and mission and driving that will help retain top talent. Whatever your mission, vision, and values are, make sure you're clear. Make sure that the people who are interviewing are clear and embrace those values, because they're the first ambassadors in your organization, and making sure that your organization internally as a whole is aligned as well. Thank you very much. I know I've been talking for 45 minutes straight. What I'd like to do now is stop sharing my screen and open up the floor for people to ask some questions and comment. One of the questions was, will we have access to the PowerPoint presentation? Absolutely. We will share that with you as well. There was a comment here from Allie that says, love that you took feedback and implement feedback. Feedback and praise are different for everyone. Highly suggest the direct supervisor asking within their first month. Absolutely. Helps build rapport and keeps others engaged. There was another comment. Is your talent acquisition? We have used Jeremiah. Okay, it says we have used success in keeping a keep warm strategy where we maintain contact with a candidate if they're a fit for the organization, for not that current opening. Jeremiah, that is absolutely a great point, and I appreciate you sharing that. A lot of organizations are so focused on filling the specific role that they will have a good candidate, they just don't have the right fit for them, and they get lost in the shuffle, and they don't try to replace them or reutilize them in a separate role or in a different opportunity. That's a fantastic point. Another one about the slides. Yes, we'll absolutely be sharing slides. Okay. I don't see any. Oh, I see one from the world famous Regan Trout, who happens to be the founder of the HRC, of which I work. She says, recommend between offer and acceptance in the onboarding experience, design and implement digital and occasional call to build the glue and educate the new hire. It speaks absolutely to, staying in communication, and it also speaks to Jeremiah's point in terms of keeping that communication open and collaboration open in order to keep your candidates warm. They will go dark quickly if they feel like they're not being heard. Just had a new question. How is AI affecting the hiring process? Companies using AI to do pre-screening and in their point of view are not connecting with candidates. What are your thoughts? Candidly, I agree. AI has its values. I think it is still too new in the recruiting and talent acquisition space. To your point, I've read articles and heard stories of qualified candidates being excluded from a screening before ever getting to the recruiter. Candidly, I feel like that's happening in more larger corporations, and it's something they need to address. But I agree with you. I think there's still a tremendous value. AI is essentially doing keyword matching. So what you're seeing is resumes that are now loaded with keywords that are unnecessary in order to get through those filters. It dilutes a resume and eliminates the candidate from being able to tell an accurate story about who they are. And it also, it's a crutch tool, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion. I feel like there's nothing more important than having a conversation and being able to screen a candidate and make that connection. There could be something on the resume or not on the resume that you'd find in a discussion that AI would never be able to pull. Regan also mentioned in the interview process, share with candidates how their role will specifically be able to impact the organization's strategy, and adding humility as a hiring authority is critical for building connection with Gen Z as well as most other candidates. I couldn't agree more. I think I rephrased it as being honest or being vulnerable, humility. It goes a long way in screening candidates, particularly in the retained search piece where you're looking for executives. The way you connect with them is by being well prepared, having a lot of insight into what the true issues are. I mean, a lot of what a job description says is what the goals of the organizational are. But the reason why you hire somebody is they're going to solve a problem. Being humble and vulnerable and being able to be honest about the challenges your organization is having is vital to be able to make the right hire. That is all I see in terms of the chat. I hope I haven't missed anything. Natasha, correct me if I have. I hope I addressed everybody's points. Okay. Well, I would like to thank everybody for participating. I'll give you 9 minutes back in your day, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to the presentation. We will share the slides, and if anyone has any questions or further comments, don't hesitate to reach out within the proposal, within the presentation. My email address is there, and I greatly appreciate your time and hope you have a great week. Thank you so much.